Welcome to Doing the Work, a Naples Integrated Recovery podcast. My name is Brian, and this space is for anyone who's tired of surviving the same emotional and behavioral loops, whether that's anxiety, trauma, addiction, or problems in your relationships. Around here, we cut the surface level advice and sugarcoating, no platitudes or bumper sticker wisdom. We focus on clarity, responsibility, emotional discipline, and the courage to look at yourself honestly so that you can stop repeating old patterns and start living with intention instead of reaction. Let's get into it. Hey there, today I'm talking about something that is probably on everybody's radar, whether you struggle with it or if it's just a thought, and that is money and financial security. And I wanted to start with, well, I'm not going to play the scene, it's just too long, but there is a great clip from Breaking Bad, if you haven't ever watched that show, where Walt in season 5 and his wife Skylar go to their storage unit where he has a pallet of money stacked on there, and it's so much that he can't even count it and doesn't even know how much it actually is. If you search the internet, it is estimated to be somewhere in the ballpark of $80 million. But so the two of them are standing over this pallet, and Skylar asks him, "How much is enough?" And that is kind of the theme of this episode, because with my addictive wiring, the answer is a little bit more. And this makes me think, my partner kind of teases me sometimes that when we're on our phones in bed, he'll say that I'm looking at my phone and going, money, 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 money. And probably there is a little bit more preoccupation with finances than there should be, compared to how much other people are struggling or suffering. But so I wanted to get to an uncomfortable question. Is the art of spending money a luxury problem? Is this something that rich people philosophize about while other people are trying to keep the lights on? I don't think so, because envy doesn't start at $1 million or $10 million. It starts in the HOA when you're living next to somebody else and you're looking at their driveway and thinking, someday I might be able to afford that blank, whatever that is. Doesn't matter if you make 40,000 or 40 million, you are dealing with comparison. And with comparison, what we're really looking at is aspiration. And probably underneath that, times of maybe humiliation or pride, jealousy, or the belief that if you had just a little bit more, then something might feel different. And this belief is nearly universal. So I recently recorded something that was pro 12-step recovery and why going to a peer program is better than one-on-one work. And now I'm going to flip and say something that I think some peer programs get wrong is I hear a dozen people say, "Oh, I think that way because I'm an alcoholic." No, you don't. Like, people nearly universally are thinking about things like this, money or more. That's not an alcoholic trait. I have worked with people who are objectively struggling. I've also worked with people who could stop working tomorrow and never even look at their statement on their bank again. The emotional structure is nearly identical. The object changes, the anxiety stays. When you don't have money, you worry about making it, and then when you have money, you worry about losing it. The nervous system just finds a new hook. And that is something that 12-step culture does not get correct, and that a lot of people don't talk about. There's this fantasy that money is going to remove stress, but in reality, money changes the theme of stress. If your identity is built around acquisition, then your brain will keep moving the finish line. And John Rockefeller said this best: just a little more. That wasn't greed in cartoon form, it was a psychological law. The amount, quote unquote, enough, is always slightly ahead of you. And here's why. Money is measurable. If I were to ask you, are you a good father? There's no dashboard, there's no metric. You feel your way with that. It's relational, it's subjective, it's messy. People could dissect it and see it different ways. But if I said, what's your net worth? What's your portfolio? We could count it to the penny, which makes it an easy scoreboard in this culture. Humans love scoreboards. We like clean metrics. We like something that we can track and optimize. And so money becomes a proxy for worth or competence, status, and safety because it's actually countable. But countable does not mean meaningful. And once you start using money primarily as a status yardstick, then you enter a game that really has no ceiling, because you can buy a house and then you notice the neighborhood. You can notice someone's second home, and then you start thinking about, man, it'd be nice to have a house wherever. And then you get the other house, and then you notice that somebody's got a jet, right? There's always another rung. The mistake is thinking that the rung is the thing that you're after. You're not chasing square footage, you're chasing a feeling. And underneath it is usually safety or revenge or belonging. All behavior makes sense with enough information. Much of what we judge in other people, like their obsession with money, their status chasing, or their workaholism, may look irrational from the outside until you understand the origin. Like, my dad grew up in a family that was shaped by the Great Depression. He wasn't alive during it, he was a boomer, but his father was, and that mindset didn't disappear when the economy recovered. It imprinted the household. And my dad talked about how his family, a mom, dad, 4 kids, would split one chicken for the entire family for dinner, which me and my partner can kill a chicken together. Meager living, scarcity, not theatrical, but like dinner. And when that is the environment that forms you, more isn't greed, it's safety. So of course, it makes sense then that this transitioned into a life where he worked 70-hour weeks as the norm. The goal was always more income, more security, more buffer. And to an outsider, that might look excessive or compulsive. Or to a kid that really needs a dad present, it might seem like you were less than. But when you look at it through this context, though, of that didn't originate in a vacuum, this makes sense. Because when your nervous system is trained in scarcity, and when that was the table you grew up in, is like cutting the chicken perfectly equal and making sure that everybody had the same piece or the same portion. Because if you were the one cutting it and gave someone a smaller piece, then that actually became yours. So if things like that were your shaping experiences, then your nervous system, it's trained for scarcity, and abundance never feels stable. And you can't just like relax your way into or meditate your way into sufficiency. You build margin. That's how psychological inheritance works. And the same thing is happening in your life. The person obsessed with status may have grown up invisible. The person who is hoarding cash may have had unstable roots, or a person that's overspending may have grown up in deprivation. So you don't have to endorse the behavior, but if you understand the backstory, then it's not mysterious. Behavior is the adaptation. Money patterns are usually protective strategies that made sense at some point earlier in life. The question isn't whether they made sense then, it is, does it still make sense now? And that's really where the work begins. So think, you see somebody, or at least I see this in Naples, if you see a Lambo and the guy has like a trophy wife in the passenger seat, we all make a snap judgment, right? What's the first thing you think? Micro penis, midlife crisis, compensating, whatever your thing is, maybe. Or maybe that guy grew up in foster care and that car is a symbol to him that he made it out of those roots. Or my partner grew up in Cuba, and for him, like, capitalism and living in the US is the most incredible thing ever, because he has really lived in communism and the hopelessness and the despair of what that looks like, where even if you work harder, who cares? You get the same thing as everybody else. He often describes it as a wasteland. But the same is true of you. The way you spend money isn't random, it's autobiographical. The person who grew up getting snubbed for being poor enjoys signaling wealth, usually. The person who grew up watching parents overspend may tightly cling to every dollar. Or someone who felt invisible may use status purchases to feel seen. So money choices are usually not about utility alone, but they can be about identity repair. The problem is when you confuse the repair symbol for repair itself, because you can buy the car or the house or the tuition trophy, but you cannot buy an inner narrative that finally rests, because that's an inside job. That's the work. So if your entire psychological stability rests on external comparison, then you are vulnerable to anyone else who is doing better than you. And social media, makes that vulnerability constant, because there's always somebody who is richer or with a better six-pack, who is traveling exotically and smiling on a yacht with a champagne flute. And then I work with these people in the office, and it's all BS. It's all so fake and manufactured. The game is not winnable. The only way out is self-examination. What do you actually value? Not what looks good in your Insta feed, not what your peers optimize, but what does your life require to feel aligned? If your goal is simply one more than that other guy, then you're outsourcing your identity. But if your goal is internal, like independence, time freedom, the ability to say no, then that's a different game. And that game has a ceiling, which means it can actually end. So that's the first pivot. Money as status is infinite, but money as independence is definable. And that distinction changes everything. I've written and recorded podcasts about lots of clients saying that they just want to be happy, which is lazy language. 'Cause happiness is a spike. It's a biochemical, like laughter. You can't laugh for 10 years straight, nonstop all the time. You can't live in permanent dopamine surge. It burns off. What people are chasing when they fantasize about money is contentment. They imagine the bigger house, the retirement account, the business, exit from the chaos of living in the corporate trenches, and the mental movie where they are thinking, this is enough. And that feeling is a drug. Contentment is durable. Happiness is episodic. The problem is that ambition and contentment can pull against each other, because ambition built modern civilization. So for anyone from a peer program who says, like, you need to just accept whatever shit hand life throws at you, I don't know about that, because had Bill Wilson been around before penicillin, then maybe he would have just said, well, maybe this is God's will, is that you die of this infection that you have. But thank God we have people that said, no, this isn't enough. I need to do more. So ambition is a good thing, but the work is keeping ambition from becoming an addiction, because the equation is pretty simple. Wealth equals what you have minus what you want. Most people exclusively focus on that first variable. They grow the income, the net worth, and the portfolio, but no one trains for the second variable. How much do you want? If your wants scale faster than your assets, then you will always feel poor, no matter what level you're at. You can 10 times your income and still feel like you're behind. It's not a math problem, it's a psychological problem. And here is where scarcity becomes your ally. Christmas, for example, works because it's once a year. But if you had Christmas every Tuesday, it would just be like, it's just Tuesday. Luxury works because it's intermittent. But if it's constant, then it becomes the baseline. And when it becomes baseline, then your brain stops rewarding it. You can see this in extreme forms. Let's say that a guy has a private chef that cooks 3 5-star meals every day. From the outside, it would look incredible. And for him, it's just a typical Wednesday. That contrast is what creates pleasure. When your meals are mostly, chicken and rice at home, and then you have a 5-star meal, that's what makes it so important or salient in the brain. But removing contrast removes pleasure. This is why having a simple life with a couple occasional spikes often produces way more joy than constant excess. Luxury can decay into quote-unquote normal faster than you think. I love Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor, right? For his time, he probably had damn near everything. But guess what he didn't have? Something that we do have in 2026 that even freaking poor people have. He didn't have antibiotics, okay? He didn't have modern medicine or air conditioning. So you live better medically now than emperors did 2,000 years ago. See, that's the trap. Luxury converts into expectation at light speed. You think that solving cancer might permanently transform the human gratitude index, but it doesn't. Within a generation, it would be assumed. So like right now, cancer is something that, a lot of us kind of fear happening because there isn't a cure, right? But 100 years from now, people probably won't even think about it. That'll be a thing of the past, the same way as like curing measles or polio, which means gratitude requires intentional friction. You have to zoom out. You have to understand context. You have to study history. Otherwise, your brain keeps telling you that the current baseline is not sufficient. So let's shift to something sharper, which is regret. You need a well-calibrated sense of future regret. That is an adult financial concept that should be internalized. Most bad decisions feel incredible in the moment, but that's why they're tempting. You're borrowing pleasure from the future. So you eat the cake, you swipe the card, you take the unnecessary risk, and the present self gets a huge dump of dopamine, and then the future self takes the consequence. That movie, The Substance, did you watch that, where a woman can take this thing, this injection or this pill or whatever, and it made her like an attractive, younger version of herself, but if she overused it, then it would cost the present version of her. Check that movie out. I think that summarizes it very well. Regret minimization is empathy for your future self. So ask yourself, when I'm 70, well, my mom's 75. Mom, ask yourself when you're 90. But if you're 40, then ask yourself, when I'm 70, what decision today will I wish that I had handled differently? And this is about honoring continuity. You're going to exist later, so respect that later person. The irony is people tend to regret different things. So think, what do you tend to regret? Overworking, overspending, under trying, staying too safe, staying too long with the wrong person? Track your pattern. That is maturity. Now flip it. Money isn't only about minimizing regret, it's also about creating memories. So here's the cliche. Spend on experiences, not things. There is some truth there, but there's also distortion because plenty of people spend on experiences purely for performance, like they go to Kilimanjaro just for an Instagram picture, and that's still status spending. Memories don't require extravagance. When you're poor, you can tell yourself that the solution is more money, and that hope carries you. But then when you are rich and unhappy, you will see how fast that collapses. You can't blame the bank balance. You can't blame that you went on that trip. What did I say? Kilimanjaro or Bali or whatever it is. And then only 300 people liked it instead of 600 people. That's when the ghosts show up. A lot of high achievers drive themselves forward under an assumption that once they arrive, then the anxiety is going to resolve. And then when it doesn't, they feel trapped. So there is no next milestone promising salvation for you. Reaching the quote-unquote goal will only expose the deeper issue, which is why money amplifies who you already are. If you are already content, then more money is going to enhance your flexibility and your joy. And if you're already restless, then more money is just going to enhance the scale of your restlessness. If you get a chance, take a look at, I have an article and a podcast on Reasonably Happy. And I talk in that about how, for me, I always kept thinking that happiness was going to rest on my next milestone. So when I was reading 400 pages a day in grad school, it was when I get that master's degree, I'm going to be so happy. Then I worked in community mental health for shit pay. And it was when I can just make $60,000, I'm going to be so happy. And then I worked in private practice, and that guy made a fortune off of my labor. And I kept thinking, oh, when I'm licensed, I'm going to be so happy. Then I got licensed, and it's like, you get what I mean? Like the goalpost just keeps on going down, that now I'm making like 4 times what I was making for that original private practice. And where is the ceiling on this? So if money isn't a status scoreboard, then what is it? It's leverage. Used correctly, it can buy you independence and some freedom for you to live your life. Independence is wildly undervalued in the way that we often talk about wealth. And that means that you could leave a job that is corrosive. Like I left that private practice working for a guy that did not value me. And maybe it means that you can absorb a medical hit without panic. Or recently, I thought that I was going to have to walk away from a construction project where this contractor kept raising the price out of nowhere. It was like, oh, well, you know, hold on a second. You didn't say that you were going to want nails as part of this. That, you know, that's not in the contract, pal. This is going to be an extra $10,000 or whatever. And I got to a point where I emailed them and I said, you know what? I'm ready to just forfeit this $30,000 deposit and be done with working with you, because it seems like there is no cap or limit on what this project looks like, and I'm just ready to be done with this. And probably for somebody else, that $30,000 loss might have meant like contemplating suicide. Marcus Aurelius wrote something about where when difficulty happens, you can respond in 2 ways. You can collapse and say, this has broken me, or you can say, this would have crushed someone else, And I'm fortunate that I am able to still move through this and for it to not crush me. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. But when you're financially pinned, your cognitive bandwidth narrows. Everything is survival optimization, but having some independence can widen that and allow you to choose instead of react. Okay, my microphone's going to sound different because I'm not Mel Robbins and I don't have 3 hours that I can spend in front of the microphone doing stuff. I recorded half of this yesterday and I'm continuing at 6 a.m. the next day. So if it sounds weird, that's why. Anyway, I left off about being able to choose instead of react. And I have always liked this idea that saving isn't necessarily about delayed gratification, but could be about buying options, that every dollar that you save is like a token of flexibility. You won't use it every year, and some years it might feel pointless. Then something hits, like you get divorced or you get sick and have to not work for 6 months, job loss, market crash. Suddenly having that cushion is like oxygen. The mistake is thinking that wealth is the pile. Wealth is the margin. I think the goal should be for money to create freedom for you instead of psychological rigidity. Another bullet point that I had on my notes that I wanted to talk about is status illusions. When you buy a car or a new house or whatever the luxury item is, some people think that people are admiring you, but they're not. They are, more than anything, they are admiring the object. And mostly it's because they are imagining themselves with that object. So like, for example, some Naples teenager here is parking luxury cars at the Ritz-Carlton and looking at the Ferraris and brain saying, if I drove that, people would notice me. Well, maybe, but probably not. Nobody notices the driver. They picture themselves in the driver's seat. And that realization is sobering because most of your performance spending is based on an exaggerated belief that people are paying attention to you, but they're not. They are busy starring in their own life movie. I talk about the spotlight effect with clients who are anxious. It's this, thought or framework that we all live in the spotlight. People are watching. They think that I look weird. They think I look fat. They think that my shirt is, ugly, whatever. And they're not. They are focused on their own shit. They're focused on their own divorce or their own cheating husband or how overweight they are. Everybody's in their own spotlight, or everybody is starring in their own movie. And once you've internalized that, the need to perform can slow down or soften. And instead, you can start to optimize for utility instead of applause or likes online. Utility means, if no one else could see it, would I still want it? And that question will cut through a lot of noise and a lot of crap in your life. If you were on an island with your spouse and your kids and a few close friends, unlimited money but no audience, what would it look like? Maybe a smaller house with a nice view, or a reliable vehicle that isn't really flashy. Probably good food, time for you and your relationships. Think about what that is for you. And if the answer is that you want a supercar because you love the supercar and you love to go fast and whatever, then that's okay too. But that exercise can strip away some of the performance. Bring in kids. You don't teach kids about money through a lecture or a Doing the Work podcast. You teach them through atmosphere. They are watching how you talk about it, how you react to bills, how you judge other people's spending, how you talk about other rich or poor people. You're modeling a financial, emotional tone. If money is always associated with panic in your voice, then they're going to absorb that. Or if you are a kind of smug superiority person walking down Fifth Ave with your $3,000 wardrobe, they notice that too. If money is a calm tool, they'll absorb that. The most important thing that you can teach a kid about money is what it cannot do, because it can buy comfort, but it can't buy character. It can buy an education, but it's not going to teach wisdom. You can buy a network, but you can't buy loyalty. So if a young person believes money is the route to worth, then they are going to chase it to compensate for all of their other undeveloped skills, whether that's humor, competence, empathy, or connection. And that compensation strategy might work temporarily, but it's not going to satisfy them long term. If you confuse net worth with human worth, you will distort your relationships. Some of the most stable, wealthy people are the ones that kept the same spouse, same friends, same everything after success. Their expectations didn't inflate at the same rate as their income. But if your income goes up 5 times and then your lifestyle expectations go up 8 times, well, you're back on the treadmill. If your income doubles and your circle stays grounded, now you've got margin, and that margin is peace. Money is not the villain, it's not the hero either, it's just leverage. And if you don't examine yourself, then money is going to magnify your insecurity. And if you do examine yourself, then money is going to magnify your freedom. That's the split. You can spend to be seen if you want. You can spend to feel safe or complete or to numb. Or you can spend to buy time, to reduce stress, to protect your family, to deepen your relationships. And that difference is internal. It's not associated necessarily to a number in a bank account. The art of spending money is the art of knowing what game you're actually playing. Are you playing the status game or the envy game or the scoreboard game, or are you playing an independence game? If you're being honest, you'll probably see yourself playing all of them, at least at different times. The work is catching it. The work is noticing when just a little bit more starts to run the show. The work is managing your wants with the same discipline that you manage your income. The work is building wealth without letting wealth become your identity, and buying options instead of applause. Here's an uncomfortable reality that a lot of people, I think, may already know, but they don't want to say or speak, and that is, you won't feel satisfied by the things that you acquire, but you might feel periodically grounded by alignment with what you value and how you spend, or alignment between your future self and your present decisions, or between your money and your relationships. That's the metric, not your net worth, not your square footage or what kind of car you drive, not your portfolio and what percent you're getting back every year. But when your money supports your character instead of replacing it, when it increases your freedom instead of your comparison, and when it lets you live deliberately and less reactively, that's doing the work financially. And I'm working on that too myself. Thanks. Thanks for spending the time with me. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with somebody who may need to hear it. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others around you. Remember that we're all doing the best that we can with the tools that we currently have, and we are all capable of growing past them. If you'd like to reach out or connect, send me an email, brian@naplesintegratedrecovery.com. I hope to hear from you there. And in the meantime, thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.